How does Heidegger situate technology? Technics. What is understood even here by technology, by techniques, by Heidegger? Heidegger speaks of the thing. The shape of the thing is placed in the context of proximity, of nearness by Heidegger. A real true distance, Heidegger says, can only be established and lingers through proximity, not through technology, techniques. Imagining, representing, presenting to oneself are already technical categories, according to Heidegger. The stock, the standing reserve, is an interchaining of these moments. The stock stands in place, says Heidegger. All things, all phenomena, what we use daily on a daily basis and use so afflicted, that the things that we now have to call objects, indeed have to call objects, because they exist and stand in. They stand there for you, and that is for you only, and they are put forward and in turn for the sake of an order, always already available. The Rhine said in the work of art, the humanist hymn of Hölderlin, what is the difference? What is the mark of a decisive moment, if there is any, in the poetic treatment of the river by Hölderlin? The hymn Hölderlin's, does it speak of the Rhine as a natural spectacle or as an object of romanticization or contemplation? Or does it treat the Rhine as an an sich selbst beständiges, dealing with the Rhine, with riverbanks, forests and mountains, as a landscape, organized into a relationship, gathered and coming together into a whole, but not put there, set up by somebody else, rather coming together by things themselves, in which the forest, the riverbanks and mountains tune in and lean towards one another, address and concern each other. In contrast, the place where technology, where techniques rules and has ruled. The turning off of the machine does not change anything about the frame, the concentration of positionality, Heidegger says. The standstill rather itself already belongs and is a moment of this gear, a moment of this exact production rhythm. The machine geostructure is a quasi-objective term or has become a notion, Heidegger says. With the end of metaphysics, something has come into its own. This is the argument of Heidegger. Something was set up, set in motion and was actualized. Man does not organize the stock, but is himself a moment of this stock, is himself organized by this stock, set in it and included, pretty much installed. Nature is completed, but therein lies at once the decision of a limit for techniques. There is still something after technology, after techniques, after how techniques is organized and is organizing the order of things, is arranging and all definitely assigned and born in the world. In nature there is still something else, that this is not technical, that there is still a trait, another real, and this is something to do with finiteness, exhaustion of resources ends, with the negative points, with the fulcrum, with the possibility of a being away, the fact that there is nothing anymore or that there can be nothing anymore. Usually one imagines the permanent, stable, continuing, enduring as the persistent. This is the permanently present. The present can be also understood as that which comes forth from itself, from the hiddenness of concealment to the unhiddenness of an unconcealment, to the event of an at once concealed unconcealment. The instrumental logic unzu, in order to, can perceive in any other way as series of things that don't add up to the whole, but are ordered to an order just for the sake of an order, where precariousness always prevails. How something essentially concerns us, how something can be present is changed by technology, by techniques as such, which presents us with objects that confronts us, that face us. There's no longer any way in which things can actually concern us. An obstacle placed in the way that we cannot bypass and that does not allow us to fully understand the possibility in this disguised way. A change that changes quite substantially but subtly how we relate to things, by becoming substances. A technology that is always already evolving. Only way things can still concern us is in a distance of a man of letters or a poet. Culturalized spectacle of nature is the only way in which we still have an access to nature, if then nature is a reservoir. Realized and realized as cultural and art business, fetishized. These are made up things, means of imagination. There is no other consciousness that would not already be technical, already having the idea of an I am, I as this consciousness. Imagine an object X. Form of technology, conscious, I, as an expression of the occasioning of the realm of technology. Language that moves, on the contrary, the being. Language that moves the being, the saga of being, to belong into the realm of a possibility, but not a possibility that is simply enabling, but rather disavowing. Poetry may be more decisive than philosophy in it, essentially disclosing, the essential disclosing trait and understanding of language, subject to technique, Technique versus a language of event, or an event of language. An evental taking place of which we are an expression, the side of truth, and which can take terms with us and reach us, drawing us into its evental and not eternal nature, but finite nature. All moments of our life are set, i.e. aligned with the frame, with the concentration of possessionality, so that we can no longer exert any influence, even if we wanted to. There is a fundamental conditioning, be-thingness. We are in a historical distance from things, Heidegger says, because if we want to talk about things, the imagination already always interferes, which, as we are conditioned by or conditioned ourselves to, is mechanized, technicalized. The tree, for example, we do not see the tree anymore, we do not encounter the tree. We're certainly closer to it. Question of nearness and distance itself, which becomes essential. Relation of things to each other suggests other kind of nexus of things, somehow undisguised impression of thing, e.g. the tree. There is a limit, a characteristic of technology, or to technology, that remains referred to by nature, and that somehow remains hidden. Forces and substances, sources and restraints of the stock. We are now standing in technology. Is it at all still possible to gain an approach to the Rhine such as Hölderlin experienced and cultivated it? Can we arrive at a relationship to technology itself that can be reflexive dealing, because by this move one would already objectify the technical trait, banding back to an object and a subject at once. While the object is present, the subject must be present, fully present and available at once. Rather, a radical dismantling of modern subjectivity is what Heidegger is after. Insight into that what is, or that which was, tells us that this closeness is actually missing from the thing. Voice, which stands in relation to the being. Being itself, a relation of reference, a events, a drawn-spanned reference, can be present. The apparent distance, closeness, which is produced by technically produced, wants us to be near, but cannot achieve it, and can objectively understand and makes of it an all decisive. But nature cannot be understood at what it is finite by this approach. In nature, a moment of finiteness is constitutively included, is inherent to nature, to the real of nature, existing and. Field itself determined by an immanent negativity. The field of nature is itself determined by an immanent negativity that is stronger than the classical notion of negativity itself. No theoretically determined negativity, no determined limit in the sense of a finite mechanism. To consider the question of the and means for Heidegger to consider the question of being and of the being and of the being of the thing. To think from finiteness as a starting point, how finiteness comes about and how it makes possible the access to phenomena and to being in itself.